Alright, hello guys, and glad to have you on board again today. A big chunk of information ahead, lots of things to process, but I try to be as explanatory and easy to understand as I can. Yes, today we're going to be talking about the NEUTRON launch. I'm not going to review the airdrop because I think it's pretty straightforward, and if you do have any problems, there are plenty of tutorials out there that will assist you on the process. I've been taking in here a quick example from my brother's account, so don't worry guys, these are not my tokens. This is really the way it is, so accounting for the fact that my brother's got 73 neutrons, it already claimed of course, and that's really the way it is. So many people have been saying, yeah, therefore where are my neutron tokens? I can't see them when I look at neutron in here, so there's probably how can I get a confirmation? So the thing is that, of course, through the website in here, you would be able to see that you have successfully claimed, so don't worry about that. There are 10 days left for you to claim, of course, so don't hurry. Still have time to do it, and there's no emergency. But of course, if you do not claim by that window, all of the remaining tokens will be clawed back and sent to the Atom DAO, or the Atom community pool, sorry. Which means eventually a second airdrop would be triggered out of this for whatever reason. But until then, that's the motive we're in. So you guys should claim, do it. That's a pretty damn good token to have, and I'll explain everything about it. All right, so despite that, what you should be thinking about is, well, first of all, how is this neutron token going to be any use for me? So it's very complicated because that's the first of a kind. There are not that many similar economic models out there. The closest ones I could get down to was the Polkadot type of launch, in which we do have a token in here which is going to be a utility token, but doesn't have to rely on its own security because it's inheriting the security from the hub. So basically in here, Neutron isn't going to be a token to stake or whatever. There's not going to be any passive income from holding Neutron. It's either going to be a gas token or a governance token. And that means finding out the economy out of it isn't going to be that easy because, of course, the economic model in here implies some fees paid back to the security provider, which is going to be the Atom validators and their related delegators. So I'm going to try bringing you kind of an easy way for you to understand how the value will transfer in between Neutron before sharing you the model that I built with it, which isn't an easy kind of model to build because, well, like I said, lots of uncertainty in terms of how these economic structure will build itself. It's really the first of a kind, and Polkadot similarities are still very, very, very different stuff. So that's really the way it is. I'm going to try explaining the best I can the way I will be navigating the Neutron's launch, what I intend to do with the token, what will be my price areas, and depending on what prices there will be, the related actions that I will perform into this. Not financial advice, of course, all right? Just sharing what I do, the reasons why I do, to try to enlighten you the most I can so that you will make the best possible decisions on your own. Okay, let's jump in. So here's the economic model for Neutron to me. So understand that just as any utility token, there is going to be kind of a value shift, kind of a loop of value, meaning some people pay and some other people receive. And that is what you're going to have to understand. So to me, there's going to be putting myself into the way that I am today. So as an Atom holder who has received a share of the Neutron's airdrop. Though, of course, we're going to have a look at different perspectives of some people who might not have received the airdrop and stuff like that. All right, okay, so here I am. It's me, okay? I have received 10 tokens. Of course, as we said, two use cases for Neutron. I will either be able to vote and participate in the governance, and otherwise I will just have to use my Neutron tokens to spend. Okay, so I'm going to be using it as a gas token for smart contracts deployed on the Neutron's blockchain. There will be many of them, and of course, you will probably make use of these. Okay, remember that the smart contract is today one of the deepest use of block space. So definitely Neutron is going to be the #1 chain in the Atom economic zone, as it's been called. So Of course, that means your use of the platform will be for free. You've been airdropped the gas token, so you'll never have to pay for a fee on using any of the Neutron's deployed tokens, deployed smart contracts, and any use cases of Neutron further down the line, because the airdrop you have is probably going to cover your gas use for several months ahead. All right? So this is the way it is. Consider it as a reserve for future uses of gas fees, and that's also on top of it a share of the overall governance token distribution, which gives you a word to say in the overall direction this thing goes. But that's the way it is, okay? On the economic model, we forget about the governance for now. I'll explain later. So your fees, where do they go? They basically are distributed to someone else, which is going to be the overall network consensus model, which means there are two ways of fee being splitted. 75% of your fees is going to go right back down to the community pool or eventually some other ways. I can't guarantee that for now because I'm not really 100% sure about where the 75% go into the Neutron side. But all I know is that 25% of the revenue stream goes to the security feed, which is the Atom validators, okay? So in here, validators receive 25%. They will take between 3 to 7%, depending on the validator fee. Remember, call it an average 5%, though the validator will take 5% fee, and 95% remaining will go to the delegators, the Atom delegators, aka you. Okay, so that's the fee model. 25% of what you spend is going to go right back into your pocket, whenever, depending, of course, on the share you have of validation power in the Atom network. But that's basically aka the thing about it. Okay, the network is going to take a 5% of these 25% to pay for the validator expenditures. Okay, the validator has an extra cost of running the Neutron chain on top of securing the Atom chain, so there, of course, will take a fee. Okay, but the validators will give you 95% remaining of it. All right, that's pretty much all about it. Okay, then the rest of the fees paid is going to go back into the community pool for community use cases. And remember, who's defining what we do with those tokens? You, okay? You have a word to say through your tokens related share in governance, okay? That's the way it is. Though there's one way that let me think about the fact that you're probably going to get some of these tokens. Why? Because of course, what we do with the community pool is going to probably, it is not guaranteed in here, pure speculation, but I definitely think this is the way to go. I've been talking with the Neutron's team. I think I can dress the profile in here of what these guys are likely going to be doing, though very, very slippery slope in here. It could be definitely wrong, but that's where I think they're headed. Reason why I would say you really want to participate in a Neutron governance, not just, keep that nice stash of Neutron for just paying gas tokens. The thing is, I think the governance of Neutron is going to be rewarding for those who participate in it, because I think this nice community pool, which is going to get 75% of the revenue stream, is still very consistent, and it's probably going to make hell of a use, either through spending incentives to get new tokens to deploy, to get new projects to deploy on Neutron, or further down the line incentive that are very hard to figure out today. But there's one thing I'm pretty damn almost certain about. I can't guarantee, okay, really, but I really think they're going to be incentivized early governance with the use of these tokens that comes from the fees, which means if you participate in a governance, if you vote, you're probably going to get rewarded with some tokens. Okay, so that's the way it is. I think that's the economic loop of Neutron, at least the way you have to get it. Okay, which means, well, you received an airdrop, you're going to use it by spending it slowly but steadily over time. You don't really have to buy, sell, arbitrage a token. That would seems to be very stupid to me. Anyway, you're going to have a 90 days lockup to prevent you from doing it too aggressively. But if you still want to play the pump and dump scheme, yeah, that's the way to go. Otherwise, I will personally just keep that stash and use it, okay? Of course, if prices go too far away from my valuations model, I may consider selling some of my tokens or buying some more, but that's really the way it is, okay? I'm gonna keep it as a stash for gas use cases and governance voting power, which means anytime there's gonna be a vote, I'm gonna be there to vote, because I think some of those gas tokens will be sent back to those who participate in the overall governance. And there's only one way to do it, it's to participate. So I would say one thing, don't necessarily wait for those incentives to be sent back to you. I think there probably could be a retroactive use of it, which means be smart enough, go ahead with it, don't wait to be paid for it, okay? Just participate in the early governance. I kind of feel like there will be rewards for this in the future. Okay, then let's put ourselves into this model and to understand that, yeah, 25% of it is going to be sent back to you anyway, which should be more than enough to refuel these kind of use cases you should have. So congratulations, guys. If you've been airdropped, you're probably never going to have to spend $1 to use anything Neutron. And believe me, you're probably going to have had a lot of use cases for Neutron, multiple smart contracts, even for pro delegators and stuff like that. We're going to make use of Neutron. I'm going to deploy quite some smart contracts out there for the managed pools and stuff. That all of the things that services that I intend to use in the future will probably be deployed as smart contracts on Neutron. So try to understand it. There's really going to be a hell of a lot of use cases of the Neutron's block space, and you're going to have a free use of it because you've been airdropped more than you would ever need. And most of it, the stash that you have, is probably going to be replenished through two ways. The first one is just by being an Atom validator, an Atom delegator, because if you delegate to Atom today, you're going to receive some Neutrons on top of it, which is probably going to replenish the use cases you have. So if you've been airdropped today, you probably just will have to focus on the governance part, because if you don't do it, you're not probably going to receive your share of the Neutrons who will compensate for your participation in governance. Okay? Of course, not all those 75% tokens will go back into your pockets, because there's probably going to be external incentive to get participation, or I don't know, LP incentives or multiple other things like that, who will make use of the community pool fundings. But the thing is that you will get a word to say on that process. Okay, so that's the economic model. Some of it will go out because that's basically the money that will be spent from the community pool elsewhere. Okay, and there is the money that will go back into your pocket. Okay, there is the revenue share you get from staking Atom, which is normally going to create a nice feedback loop of a free use of anything Neutron. All right, though now the question is, for someone who doesn't have received the airdrop, if you are into the Cosmos ecosystem already, then you got to be ready for you to require to get some Neutron tokens. You're gonna have to get them because you're gonna have probably to use some of the smart contracts in Neutron one way or the other, and you're gonna have to pay for the fees. So the thing is, just the question is, how much do you need to use? We'll answer the question of how much of these tokens do you really need to have. Okay, that's really the way it is. The second question is, do you want to have a word to say in the Neutron's governance? If, for example, you intend to deploy smart contracts on Neutron and stuff like that, you're definitely willing to get a word to say. So if you're just a gas user, someone is going to use but not deploy in Neutron, I think getting a bit of Neutron just for the sake of gas fee paying is probably going to be more than enough. If you intend to deploy smart contracts and be actively working on the actual platform itself, you really want to get a word to say in the governance, and you're going to have to buy more tokens, okay? So that's the way it is. So there are multiple profiles in here, but whoever doesn't have the Neutron shares on the airdrop, or will have to buy some in order to deploy contracts or get a word to say in the governance, you're going to have to buy those tokens. That's the reason why there's going to be a liquidity auction, which means, well, these guys are going to have to buy with, I don't know, atoms, money, USDC or whatever. They're going to have to buy their share into the Neutron, either just to pay for gas fees or to get a word to say in the governance, all right? And this means, well, it's hard to define because, like we stated, this is a kind of a business model in which we don't really know. We also expect that most of the actual population who's going to make use of Neutron in its early days are probably Cosmos aligned, which means most people probably already get the Neutrons they need. So the question is, how do we stabilize that business model with such uncertainty of we don't really know how many external users are going to join in here, or how many existing Atom-aligned users are willing to get more, either in the governance or we're going to need tokens to deploy on the blockchain. So that's really the way it is. It's very, very uncertain to me to figure out how these things are going to balance. So I've been discussing, of course, with the Neutron team among other teams, and I've been very pleased to see some smart people out there. And well, the advice was, of course, you really face a very complicated monetary system in here, because there really are too many uncertain parameters to shift in order to figure out the price on the actual token itself. So I'll be straightforward. I've built a model which is not perfect. I can't say how many uncertainties there were in the parameters that I had chosen for this model. So bear that one in mind. Don't take it for granted, please, guys. But I wanted to share it anyway, because that's the best I can to try to explain you how I motivated my decision-making process ahead of eventually considering liquidity providing, eventually adding and buy more tokens, and so on. I had to define some base case scenarios, and then of course if the reality diverges too much of it, that means the model itself is probably not good. But otherwise, it's always better to have a model and have a plan rather than just going randomly by the winds the markets will bring them to. Okay, so here's the model that I have. It says, well, I hardly could say how I switched the parameters, but the model gave me an endgame $3 billion valuation for this smart contract platform secured by the Atom. It also gave me a slower than expected kind of growth rates to get to that valuation due to the fact that there is no security intrinsic value to be spent, because the security is provided by the Atom token. So I'm not going into the nitty-gritty details of how I ended up with those numbers, but here it is. Here's the growth model that I have for Neutron with an endgame $3 billion valuation for this project. So, of course, the reality may differ, but that's the way to go. Though, starting with an average $500 million valuation, which is hardly going to be met in the current market context. I remind you, we are in a very depressed market environment. Everything is down the cave, everything's going to die, you know the drill, we're all going to die, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, things will pass and we'll get over this, I definitely think of. And I will start to project myself ahead of 2 timescales, 6 months away from now and 1 year away from now. Oh, sorry, it's going to be 12 months and 6 months, okay? So I can hardly say where we're going to be 6 months from now. I think uncertainty will be, of course, higher at 12 months. But I think, as you can see, the relative volatility expected by the model is slower at 12 months. So that's the motivation that I will have, putting myself ahead 12 months after TGE, the token launch event. Okay, so that's the way it is, okay? The model tells me, well, out of a year, I should get kind of a support out of $1, even in the base case of a bear market. That means the blue line is the most depressed, the most low demand kind of price. High demand price would be $3 and likely never going to cross over that price, okay? And the average value price would be $2.50. A year from now, okay? And remember that in the meantime, we can hardly figure out just how much supply and demand there will be for this token. So at launch, well, it could very well worth $0 or $5.6. I goddamn don't know, and I definitely will not be stupid enough to play the gamble game. Okay, so that's really the way it is. If it's really cheap token, I'm probably going to buy more. If it goes above $2.50, I'm probably going to consider selling some. And if it ever goes $5 for whatever stupid over speculative reasons, I'll be selling it all. So that's really the way it is, all right? Here is absolute overvaluation. This would be rough valuation of an average price in a normal market conditions. We're definitely not into. So I think we're mostly going to open in this area, okay? So that is still hell of a broad band. I mean, that's going from 2.82 to 0. So basically, it's hard to say how much it's worth. Reason why I'm not going to play the short-term speculative gambles of how high, how low this thing could go. I'm going to put myself easy into this 6 to 12 months in which the valuation should be more rational. According to my model, I have a $1, and just like I have hell a lot of uncertainty, I'm going to go for a base case scenario of 1/3, which means $1, 30 cents, and a maximum cap valuation at $3, which means if we ever go above $3, you can be damn sure I'm going to be selling the neutrons that have been granted. I mean, whoever's ready to pay $3 for this, take mines. I'll buy mines later at a cheaper prices afterwards, and anyway, I'm going to receive some of those neutrons by just being an Atom staker. So, well, if you want to buy my share of governance at $3 the token, take it. Otherwise, I doubt we'll get there. So this is the comfortable zone for Neutron to launch. I hardly think it's going to outpace $2, just like I doubt it will be in the long-term trade below $1. All right? But of course, it can trade below $1 for a significant amount of time. That depends on the volatility. So my base case scenario areas will be maximum $3 because it will be far overrated stuff beyond that limit. $1 would be the base case in the market conditions we're in, and 30 cents, 1/3 of it, would be my base case for intervention. Due to the relative uncertainty of my model, that means below 30 cents, I can consider buying more. $1 would be the rough valuation to me, and $3 would be overvaluation. Okay, that's really the way it is. And that means anything in the $2.5 to $3 mark is where I sell, okay? Anything below 33 cents is where I'll buy, and this is my average valuation for the launch event, okay? Though, like I said, this is a model. Though this is definitely not me knowing anything about the future. This is not a crystal ball. It's just, despite having better stuff, this is what I'm going to be working on with the uncertainty that is, of course, coming along with it. But like I said, I'd rather like to have a model and have it proven wrong rather than just working with the finger guessing stuff that many people have out there, okay? These are fundamental metrics that I use, not just for Neutron, but somewhere else. The model that I have in here, I've proven itself to be very consistently good, but it is also the first of a kind. Like we stated earlier, I have no preceding model, so I had to shift the parameters manually to get to those $3 billion endgame valuations 4 years from now, all right? That's really the way it is. Okay, so the other thing we need to understand is the supply schedule, which means there is a huge moment in which things will change a year from now, because we're going to get the introduction of some tokens coming from the community pool specifically. Okay, so there's going to be a shift in the governance in here, also accounting that the team vestings will start, team and VC vestings will start out of a year from now. So for the time being, now and for a year ahead, okay, the VCs and the team do have governance power, but they won't be able to sell their tokens, which means we're left with community tokens and airdrop tokens to define the prices for at least a year. That's also the reason why I'm planning myself over that year ahead, all right? So that's really, really important for you to figure it out. A year from now, we're going to start seeing VCs and teams being ready to dilute the token supply if they want to, okay? So that's an important factor to get in, all right? Okay, so now that we've got the base case scenario, we need to understand that token launch event. So that's a liquidity auction. What I like in here is that this is not the usual shit show that you will see on coin lists and stuff like that. Or basically, yeah, let's say the Neutron price is $1. So are you guys in or not? No, that's not the way it is. There's going to be a liquid auction, which means we're going to look for the stable price because, like I stated earlier, it's got them hard to figure out the actual demand there will be for this token, knowing that most of the users on the Atom community and the Atom community is already receiving some tokens through the airdrop. So it's hard to figure out how much demand, external demand there will be for this token on both the fee use cases and or the governance use case. So this is really, really a one of a kind, which is going to have to find its own stability model. I gave you the valuation model that I have. Below 33 cents could be a buy, above kind of hard and stuff like that. All right. And an average growth valuation of $1 a year from now in the base case scenario. That means not a bull market and stuff like that. Okay. So that's the way it is. Though the thing is that two pools are going to be created to bring liquidity to the token. On the Neutron side, they're bringing 4 million tokens down the table for this auction, and people will be willing to buy with either USDC or Atom. So you can participate in building liquidity shares for these two things, okay, depending on, of course, how much you're willing to pay for, okay? So you're going to bring some atoms to the table or USDCs to fill up the demand on future LP shares, which means this will be provided as an LP share, okay, for those who want to participate. And then, of course, that means you will be locked for 3 months in those LP shares, just like the actual airdrop, okay? But there will be incentive because, of course, when you go into providing liquidity, the number one risk is the underlying impermanent loss probability, which means very important stuff, and you will understand why I got to the 33 cents anyway, is that, well, what matters is if you go for 1 year projections of producing liquidity, then you need to project yourself out of the volatility of the underlying tokens. Though, like I stated, if you go for a 33 cent, okay, starting average row prices for Neutron, this is my base case scenario of the price that I'm willing to pay, okay? If you project yourself a year ahead in the future, you would expect an average price of 2.49. That means a somewhat 10x, okay? That means the dollars you've put in, they haven't moved, okay? You've put it USDC, and the balance of that Neutron USDC share is going to imbalance, and you're going to have, therefore, the impermanent loss for the USDC part of the LP share. Though if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, just look at some liquidity providing podcasts out there to understand how this thing works. Though the reason why I'm not going to go for the USDC pool is the reason for this, because I'm going to go for the Atom pool personally. For the reason is, if it launches for whatever reason at an auction price somewhere around 33 cents or below, that's also consistent with the fact that's also what I expect for Atom. I expect Atom price to be 10 times what it is today a year from now. You know that Atom currently priced at $10, and you know that I target a $100 valuation for the token, which means a 10x. And of course, god damn it, this is speculation. Remember that if you have stars in your eyes, like, oh, I could make 10x, yeah, I'm on board, that means there is a significant risk factor. Remember that, okay? But if it goes down this path, I think Neutron and Atom have very aligned futures. The success of Atom is the success of Neutron, and I can hardly imagine it the other way around. So that's the way it is. So I definitely think there are incentive aligned for both of these projects. And I think, therefore, if you want to reduce the volatility of both tokens, kind of makes sense. To me, my model assumes that ICS is going to work, Atom is going to work, and Neutron is going to benefit from this. And in that sense, well, both can value at 10x from today. Therefore, if Neutron launch for 30 cents, it will be 10x higher a year from now, just like Atom, which means my LP share will not take too much impermanent loss risks. So that's the reason why the 30 cent is a very nice metric for me, because that's basically a 10x away from the expected 1 year ahead valuation, okay? And in that sense, that's the reason why anything below 30 cents to me would be a rational price to go in to reduce the underlying impermanent loss risks a year away from now, because, like I said, I project myself 1 year away from now, and then I'll adjust. That's also the reason why, well, like I said, it mostly depends on the price there is. And just like I don't know what the end price will be, there is an auction system, and they've been using what general market makers do when they have to IPO a company or whatever. They do kind of these things of, we're going to figure out just how much demand there is, and we're going to do an auction to figure out the relative share price, the fair price to jump in this thing, okay? So the way to go is, the Neutron price in here, the Neutron launch auction price, is going to be defined by the demand. The offer is 4 million neutrons available, and just how much demand there will be for it is going to define the auction price for it, okay? That's the way it is. Though, of course, to me, an auction price going above 30 cents isn't going to be very interesting to me for the reasons stated before. The higher we go above 30 cents, the lower my interest in this auction will be. Reasons have been explained before. If you don't understand, just go back and learn, okay? That's the way it is. Though I'm going to go for this pair, not this pair, for the reasons explained as well. I'm going to go for this pair as long as the price is below 30 cents. If it goes higher, I'm going to either reduce my share on the LP or consider just getting out, because if it goes above $1, I don't want to be in, okay? So to me, above $1, it's a no-go. I just want out. If it's below 30 cents, I'm in. Okay, definitely I'm in. The way it's going to happen for people to just be able to test the market and be able to eventually withdraw some of their funds is the way professionals do in IPOs, is there is an initial period in which everybody can deposit and withdraw depending on the others people, okay? I'm going to taste the market reaction, and depending on what the others will do, I will define what I do as well. That's how we auction, okay? So I'll be able to go in and out for the first 3 or 4 days. It's going to end in 3 days from now, so it's going to be Monday at midday for me in Europe. And that's the way it is, okay? So 3 days from now, I can do everything buy, sell, or not buy, sell, add or remove liquidity depending on what the market does. Like I said, as long as it's below 30 cents, I'm just going to add liquidity and not consider removing it. If it goes above, I will start removing. Then past that 3 days period, I'm going to be able to withdraw up to 50% of what I deposited, which means the money that I put it in, I cannot withdraw more than half of it, okay? And then goes a second period for a last day, which is fairly much more easy to understand in that way, okay? For 5 days, I could do whatever I want. For the remaining 2 days, there's 1 day in which I can withdraw 50%, okay? And then the second day, it goes all the way down to 0 with a linear scale, okay? So that is basically for the first 5 days, there could be people bringing volatility, there will be people bringing liquidity in, some may withdraw, add, withdraw, add. It's going to help stabilizing the price. And then of course, 6 and 7 days will be less rewards, withdraw, which means it can only go down after the 5th day because nobody can be adding liquidity later on. It's going to reduce the stability, and then the last day is just going to be less and less allowed withdrawal to kind of figure out the end game price. Once we got the end game price, all of the deposited money is going to be sent into an LP share, okay? You're going to receive the LP share related to what you've deposited in here, okay? That means as Neutron brings 50% of the liquidity, they'll end up with 50% of the LP shares, okay? And you get distributed the rest of it. So that's the way to go, okay? Then once you've got those LP shares, okay, they will be an incentive, of course, if you decide to lock those shares. Remember that having an LP share is just going to get you the right to receive the swapping fees on the pool, and that's it, okay? And therefore, this is all there is. So, of course, in early stages, there's always liquidity incentive to force you and compensate for the volatility risks of impermanent loss, okay? Though that's really the way it is. The incentive system they brought in is pretty smart, and I would tend to say that this is very well crafted. So the actual thing, okay, is that they're put it in a lock drop mechanism, okay? So that means the LP share that you have, anyhow, they're locked on a linear vesting for 3 months, just like the airdrop. Okay, so I mean, if you participated in the auction, you won't be able to sell your LP shares for 3 months on a linear scale, which means on day 1, you get to sell a portion of it, and up to 90 days in which you can sell it all if you want to. Okay, you retain liquidity just like the airdrop. Though the lock drop has an additional incentive, which is available if you decide to lock your tokens for a longer duration than the early 3 months that you have, okay? So that's the way it is. On the auction, you're probably going to have a cheap price of neutrons, but you're going to be locked for 3 months. And then if you decide to lock it longer and to bring liquidity over the long term, you're going to get the liquidity incentive. To me, that's a much smarter decision-making process than just going for the osmosis way of figure out your liquidity bootstrap, and then once you're in, you're going to have to spend a shitload of money into incentivize people to retain the liquidity on the pool so that you can get sufficient depth of the market. So in here, they've been going on for a long-term alignment, and I think they really try to shake hand with Atom depositors in here due to the way they've built this thing. And to be honest, I definitely am willing to jump depending on the prices. Though like I stated, I'm probably going to participate in the auction as long as prices don't overshoot 30 cents, which will be my limit to me. Above that price, it will increase the risk of LP to imbalance a year away in the future. And in that sense, that will increase my risk of impermanent loss. That doesn't mean I won't go in. That just means it will increase the risks, which means I'm really going to need a nice reward for the lock drop. If I'm willing to lock my liquidity away for a year, then I really want to get rewarded. And that's how they came up with a pretty sophisticated and, once again, smart way to do it, which means they will be the same kind of auction for LPs, going in a second round of 3 to 2 days, following the same previous mechanism, which means it's really going to be, okay. the same thing as it is, okay? So for 3 days, you're going to be able to lock your LPs on the durations that you want, depending on from 3 months to a year, and you're going to be able to create your own custom stuff. You can create just as many locks as you want. You can lock, for example, 20% of your liquidity for 3 months. You can lock the remaining 70% for a year, or 20% for 6 months and the rest for a year. You can do whatever it is that you want. Create your own mix of LP locked durations, okay? And the thing is that for the next 2 days, there's going to be the same mechanisms, okay? You cannot remove your lock drop auctions up to 50%, and then the last day will pull it right down to 0%. So that's the same old mechanism of figuring out the balance, and then once you got the balance, you can withdraw only, okay? And then you can withdraw less until the last day, and you figure out the balance price, okay? But in here, it's not a price. What we get up is a distribution of the LP shares lock over a 1 year period. Though in order to incentivize longer durations, which is of course higher uncertainty over the potential impermanent loss, requires of course to be more rewarded. So they've gone from a parabolic shaped curve, which means aka the longer you stay, the bigger your shares will be multiplied in the overall drop. The drop will be 10 million neutrons going to be distributed to those who decide to lock their liquidity away for different durations. Remember, if you lock for 3 months, you're going to have a 0 multiplier, okay? Means no addition value into the overall grand scheme of things. You're going to have an 8 times multiplier if you lock for 12 months, and there's a gradient in between, of course, okay? There is an exponential log curve in here. That's really the way it is, okay? So the thing is, as you get for this thing, the longer, the bigger your share of liquidity will be multiplied in the overall grand scheme of things. They create LP shares, well, those multipliers, and they distribute 10 million neutrons to those who decide to lock their tokens, okay? So, of course, the auction in here is very important to me because I will decide my mix depending on what others will do. Remember, if for whatever reason there is too much demand for 12 months lockups, then that means locking my shares away will not necessarily reward me that much. So that's really the way it is. Depending on what others will do, I will define what I do as well. If I see enough risk limitation for 12 months, I'm probably going to go for it. Otherwise, it's going to be a mix of somewhere below 12 months to 9 months. My choices will be there. I think this is where the sweet spots are, 9 months and 12 months, and eventually not locking if there is not enough interest to do so. So that will mostly depend on it. The thing is that the vesting period for the airdrop tokens is going to be 0, okay? So that's the thing. It's very important. Lock drop rewards will be withdrawn immediately, okay? So there will be an auction for these 10 million neutrons distribution depending on how many people want to lock and on how much duration they're willing to engage on. And that will create a distribution for these 10 million neutrons. And those 10 million neutrons will be available immediately, okay? Immediately. That's really, really important for you to understand that, okay? So those who will LP will get access to immediate liquidity, but of course, their liquidity will be locked away for the duration they engage themselves in, which is a minimum 3-month lock, okay? So that's really important for you to understand that. Those who will LP, okay, those who will go for the auction, okay, those who will participate in the auction but doesn't lock their tokens away will not be eligible for the 10 million incentive, but they will have a linear vesting of both their airdrop or and their liquidity, okay? So that means if you have liquidity shares, they will be locked away for the same 90 days periods of the Neutron's airdrop. Okay, so that's how it goes. Can be a bit complicated for everyone to process, but I think now you have all the requirements to understand how it goes. So if you've received the Neutron's airdrop, just like I did, the question is, and depend mostly on the auction price. Depending on the auction price, I probably will put some atoms on the table to participate in the liquidity alignment there is between those two tokens. I think neutrons and Atom will both benefit in the long term of this partnership, and I'm willing as a smart investor to participate in it as well. And I think there's definitely going to be a hell of a lot of demand on the Atom neutron share of the pool. I think less interest in the USDC share, potentially due to more impermanent loss risks. But we'll see. If I am right, there should be much more demand on the Atom share, and that's what we see already, okay? Though the thing is that this is going to be offer and demand over time, and we'll see how much demand there is. Depending on the price, like I said, as long as it's below 30 cents, I'm probably going to be in. The lower, the better. If it crosses over 30 cents, that means risk is starting to increase, which means I'm potentially going to consider withdraw some of the initial promise. How much depends on how high we top at or above 30 cents. Okay, that's really the way it is. My crossover limit is going to be 30 cents. If we're at 30 cents, I'm probably not going to deposit all, but I'm not going to withdraw everything. Okay, that's really the way it is. Then, as the price stabilizes over the latest couple of days, I will decide, okay, if the price drops a lot, then I'm not going to withdraw anything. If the price doesn't drop, I may withdraw a bit. That's really the way it is, okay? Though the closer we end up of 30 cents, the bigger the share I will withdraw on the latest today. The bigger the price drops away from 30 cents, the less I will withdraw. That's the way it is. Then I think I will probably participate in the log drop anyhow and anyway, but that will mostly depend on how much the demand is for longer duration. If everybody is willing to lock it away for a year, that means, yeah, I might not necessarily willing to do it, or I will not necessarily do it with all my LP shares. I will build my own demand based on others' demand. And you have to understand why the way they came up with these kind of visibility period in which everybody can do whatever they want, and then these kind of withdrawal cap periods with a lockup, with a degrading shape. That's the way it goes in professional IPO systems. Though in professional IPO system, in general grand exchanges and stuff like that, is that generally these periods are longer than 5 days. But I mean, we're in crypto, everything goes fast. So I'm very curious to see if this period and duration is going to be enough for a sufficient price discovery and liquidity discovery. I think they will. My humble opinion in here is that this is the first of a kind. So I can hardly say if the balances will be matched in such short notice, but I think they can. So I will definitely carefully look at all of those metrics in the next following days. I'm very, very interested by this project. I think I'm going to put some atoms down the table to figure it out and to participate in it. What I will do depends on the metrics and depends mostly on what other market participants will do and how much they do of it. But at least now you understand why these mechanics are required, because no one has the answer. We're going to figure it out all together through these look and search mechanisms. All right? So the way they've designed it is exactly the way to go. To me, that's how a professional liquidity bootstrap should be done further down the line. Though I definitely will incentivize any other project to launch in the future, or even tokens who will be launching on Neutron in the future, to use similar liquidity bootstrap situations. I think this is way, way smarter than the other stuff that we've seen out there, like the stream swap, whatever. This is really retail way of doing things. Professional way of doing things is exactly like that. And that's also the reason why I'm not just shilling, but to be honest, I've been discussing with a lot of teams in the Cosmos ecosystem. Some are very immature folks. Some are smart folks lacking of economic knowledge for most of them. Remember, most of Cosmos guys are cypherpunks, so they're not really familiar with economics in general. But I'd like to say that what I've experienced with Neutron is a very interesting mix of very competent people who do have some basic knowledge of economics, which is a rare case scenario in my experience so far. So I would like to say, well, this is the proof that once again, they weren't just talking economics without knowing. The fact that they've been copying and mimicking more professional way of introducing liquidity, figuring out stability prices, is the sign to me that they were not just talking back then. They're actually proving it with their actions. And to me, that's really, really increasing my confidence in the longer alignment we will have with these guys. I think the ICS and Neutron is a long love story, and I hope it will be, but I will willingly participate into this. because I think this is a good project. More than just the fact that every smart contract out there is always the #1 use case for block space today, and I think will be in the future as well. Though I think Neutron is probably going to be the biggest chain in the interchain for Atom. So I think this doesn't come along without risk-taking, because of course, that means this is the first doing it. This is the first of a kind introductory system of a tokens that both have utility and governance, but still inherit security from the hub. So this is an economic model that's going to have to build itself over time. I think the 25% fee that is taken for security is kind of very well crafted as well, but once again, I don't know the future. I think the balance is there. I hope the price liquidity auction balance and lock drop balance will be found just as well in here. I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, my action will depend on what others will do. Reason why I'm pretty damn pleased with these auction systems. They're very smartly handled, and I'm just very curious to see how this thing will all go down. So see you guys on the other way, on the other side. I hope at least now you have all the necessary elements to make wise decisions in the process of those auctions. Of course, take your own risks, do your own research. What I've done in here is just explaining how this thing goes, how I will personally expose my capital to this. I'll put my money where my mouth is. Once again, I try to explain every of the metrics that I will use. And that being said, that's going to be all of it for today's. I wish you guys a nice Neutron lunch. To the Neutron team, it's a very pleasant hi and welcome into the ICS. We expect a lot from you, and I think you will deliver just because you really have proven so far to be a very quality team. So thank you guys for being part of the ICS. We're very proud to welcome you into the Cosmos ecosystem. See you guys later.